Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
In today's episode 164 of Podcast 2 for 1, youtube.com/2for1 studios, the best place to consume the content. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. That way you're up to date on all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1, as well as all the cool content we have at 2 for 1 Studios. And if you didn't know, and let's be honest, you probably fucking didn't, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Hill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Kapow. And if you're watching on YouTube, then you already know we are joined by a very special guest, Johnnie fucking Brannon. Johnnie, can you give our listeners a small intro into all the things you do in the filmmaking world?
Oh, well, let's see here. Actor, filmmaker, and when I'm not doing that, I have been for the past 5 years co-directing the Made in Arkansas Film Festival. Let's see here. What else have I been doing? Just pretty much it. Auditioning nonstop for all the cool regional films and TV shows that's in our areas, that's not here in our area, but that's a constant. And and I got a movie that's in post-production, so it's almost done. I say that, but there's still some things that I'm getting ready to do. But anyway,
it's never done, Johnnie. It's always abandoned. It's whenever you abandon it, that's when it's done. Like, I'm done with this. I can't color it anymore. Listeners, I very excited to have Johnnie on here today. We asked him probably about an hour ago, hey, you want to hop on here and do it with us? We kind of in a slower period of content being released, which is kind of abnormal. I feel like we're in the first time in a while where it's like we don't have some gigantic movie around the corner that kind of falls in our normal genre bin. And we also don't have a steady stream of either Marvel or Star Wars or some other Netflix show that's like it's again within our genre. So
we're Barry, we're I know you finished Barry. I am 3/4 through Barry, or 2/3, 1/3, something like that. And so that's one. There is some hot TV shows going on despite the staples we're used to.
Sure. And I do in a second do a little bit of what you're watching kind of thing, just a quick recap or just what we're kind of talking about. And then we'll kind of get into our main topic, which I also haven't come up with yet. And so big thing, I kind of know I have an idea. So what you been watching, Johnnie? If we can keep this within like a minute or two, there's no spoilers because Daniel hasn't seen all of Barry, and then we kind of touch base and what's the one show you could recommend to our listeners right now?
Oh gosh, let's see here. Well, like you said, Daniel's still working on Barry, finished that, and I started Succession, so I'm about 3 or 4 episodes into that. And the one that a lot of people that's not watching, or the show that a lot of people is not watching that they should be watching, is Somebody Somewhere on HBO. It's a very simple comedy, and Mark and Jay Duplass brothers, they produce it, and it's got I had to look over here real quick, Bridget Everett, who's I think she's hilarious. She kind of popped in a few years back, I think on Amy Schumer. I think she was kind of part of that. Then Bridget just went off in her direction, and it's just a feel good show, kind of like a Ted Lasso, but more indie. And it takes place in a small town in Kansas, and it's just her dealing with small town life and her best friend and family issues. It's fantastic. So big suggestion, and it's on Max. So
the place you go to watch HBO. That's what I hear. That's where you go to watch HBO
or reality TV, because apparently
my gosh,
over half of their content right now is reality TV. It makes sense. It's cheap to make and all that stuff, but still, it's a bad metric. You know what I mean? It's like we've got some of the best television that's ever been made and some of the worst that's ever been made all in one place. So you're either a highbrow or a not highbrow person. but they're all Max.
With the acquisition, they definitely hit a broader spectrum of people, which I think was their goal, but I do think it has diluted the app a little bit for me.
I'll be honest, I didn't even know until they started merging that all the Discovery was reality TV now, because like when I was a kid, Discovery was like animal shows and like nature documentaries like that. So like it is an interesting world.
Well, Daniel, what you been watching?
I've been watching Barry. We are 3 episodes in. I think it's like 8 episodes, right? So chugging right along. Also, we just finished Fargo season 3. We've been working our way through the Fargo show. Have you seen that, Johnny?
I started season 1 last week.
Oh man, it's good. It's really good. It's an interesting series because each season, they're not true anthologies, but they take place with different characters in different time frames, and they referenced the other seasons, but it's like it's really cool. And it's just really, really well done. It like the cinematography reminds me of like Breaking Bad, where it has like such informative cinematography. Like the shots really tell you what the characters are thinking or what they're going through. And then just the acting has been phenomenal. I think the first season might still be my favorite, but this 3rd season had Ewan McGregor playing 2 characters, which was fun. And it was great. It's just a lot of fun. Then the other show we've been watching is Dave on FX or Hulu. It's about David Bird, or Little Dicky, if you may know him from the YouTubes. It's great. It's a great comedy. I think it's really well written, and the characters, like from season 1, they all feel real. Like the dialogue is really well done. You can tell they just got a lot of chemistry or whatever. It feels real. But at the same time, it's really funny because their characters are getting them in ridiculous situations, and you've got this very white Jewish guy trying to say he's going to become the greatest rapper of all time, and like it's hilarious is what it is. I think even if you don't like hip hop or music like that, I think you will find something to enjoy about this show. It's just well done. And so that's it. I mean, like it's hard to recommend one of those. I mean, if you want, me and my wife, we like to alternate. We like a little comedy, we like a little drama, thriller, but we don't like just one. So like comedy, I think Dave's right up there. Drama, thrillers, Fargo. We've also been watching Yellow Jackets, which only has 1 episode left on Showtime. It's pretty good. I would say the music and the production design and like those parts of it, because it's kind of a horror show, are top of the line. Like just like the soundtrack and the way they use sound effects, it's just like amazing. The story sometimes it's more scary than not, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes it makes more sense than not, but we're still here, and so that says something. We haven't just given up. So yeah, if you like horror shows, I mean, it's got a lot of like, I don't know, there's some lost elements to it. There's some like, I guess like Children of the Corn. I mean, kids surviving cannibalism, all that kind of stuff in there. So yeah, it might be something that you guys would like. I would recommend at least trying it.
I watched the first season of it, so I haven't got a chance to check out the second season yet.
What did you think about the first season?
I liked it a lot. I liked it quite a bit when we watched it. Wasn't sure what to expect, but I mean, it was I'm not sure who else watched it out there, but don't want to give any spoilers away. But I had an inkling that it was leaning towards kind of like that movie years ago they made called Live, about the rugby players that had a plane crash in the Andes, and they all had to resort to doing what they had to do to survive. Right. So and I saw that in the theater years ago, and it was fascinating. And so when I saw the trailer of this originally, I thought that was kind of the same thing, but also it goes into an interesting direction of the characters and stuff. So it's pretty fascinating, and all the characters I love, the actors.
Yes, really, and I'll just say that the casting is crazy good. How similar the child actors look to the adult actors, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh. And sometimes they'll do like match cuts, right? They'll match cut from the older actor to the younger actor, and you're just like, that looks like a younger version of her. It's like, it's just like, it's such a, I don't know, it's wild. Yeah, I'll say the season 1, I thought they were going to give us more than they did by the end. I kind of
Yes,
felt
yeah.
like it was a bit of a cliffhanger, and I was expecting a little bit more information or something to come out. Season 2's been better about that. And I will say, like, where they are now in terms of the story, because there is like a spiritual element, is all I'll say to it. I feel like it's a very interesting place to be, because they're not showing their hand. I'm not really sure what exactly is going on yet, but it's yeah. So I think season 2 for me might be better than season 1.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, as far as for me, this week has been kind of crazy in terms of end of shows. So I watched Succession, the long 1.5 hour series finale of that, and it is one of the best shows of all time. And I'm curious to see if Johnny, when you finish it, we think about the ending of it all. But that show is one of the goats of all time. And I finished Barry, and I know there's some interesting reaction to the ending to that online, and I've got some thoughts, but I really enjoyed it, and I feel like the ending fits with kind of what the show has been doing the whole time. And so I liked it. I thought it was good. I think it's also one of the better shows that we've had in the last ever in a while. That just
It's Breaking
felt
Bad with
unique.
humor.
It's Breaking Bad with humor, and it's interesting because based on what they've been doing the last season and a half, this feels like the ending that you could maybe expect, kind of, but also I kind of like the version of Barry in the first season. I kind of like that show a little bit better, but that's just me.
It was a bit more humorous in the beginning, I think, and just a little bit more. Just everything got so serious by the time we're into season 5.
He was more redeemable for me, and I like
Yeah.
my characters to. I can't say much, but I like things to happen.
Yeah.
And as far as also Ted Lasso, I finished the series finale for that yesterday.
Yeah,
and
we watched it last night too.
The last 10 minutes, I was just sitting there, and just a heavy stream of warm tears going down my face. And that show is, people have had issues also with it, and kind of the way they've went to do different characters of the last couple of seasons. But I think it was not necessary, but I was okay with it. And I think that it does what it needed to do. And the fact that this show had come out during a time when it's been very difficult for us as a human population, and it's a feel-good story, and it knew when to dip out, and it's also one of the greatest of all time. Like, I think it's if you want to feel good, watch Ted Lasso from beginning to end. And the last thing I recommend all 3 of those, but Fubar on Netflix just come out in the last week, and
Arnold
Schwarzenegger, yeah. It's an 8-episode TV show. It's his first TV show, and Skydance helped or produced it, and I'm about halfway through the season now. I watched most of it last weekend, but I picked it back up yesterday. And it's not a whole lot of action in it, which is, but he's 75 years old. But what's great about it is his connection to all the other characters, and it's Arnold's best acting, since the early 90s.
Yeah.
Easy. It's like, I don't know, anything he's done post Governor, this blows it all out of the water. It's like actually like Arnold's acting again. And it's like, what and it actually ties to my topic a little bit. I'm like, what got you there? Like, how are you doing this now when you're like 15 years older than you did 15 years ago? But it's really good characterizations. Real quick, so I recommend Fubar if you want just a nice kind of family melodrama comedy, but also a little bit of spy action in there as well. If you like True Lies, like a watered down True Lies, you'll probably like this show. So I want to check out Fargo. I want to check out Yellow Jackets, and I've been meaning to check out the show that Johnny, you just mentioned. And I've seen it on your Facebook profile a couple times. But let's get into the kind of the topic. And this is a loose topic in terms of if we can kind of go down a rabbit hole a little bit, and we can kind of maybe this will springboard some other interesting things. But I think last time we were on here, Daniel, where we kind of had a discussion like this, we talked about writing and what inspired you and those kind of things. I kind of want to switch over a little bit to directing. And now I know we're not big Hollywood directors. We haven't directed anything that has required a huge amount of budget resources, or mega movie stars, right? Where it's like we might be more difficult than say local filmmakers, not taking anything from them, but it's just a different dynamic, right? When you're dealing with somebody who's got pull and they're getting paid a lot of money to be there, etc. I kind of just want to talk, and I want to ask Johnny first. Like, Johnny, what's your approach to directing actors in terms of like when you got on the day, what did you do in terms of working with them to get them to the place that you wanted them to be? Because I would assume that for all three of us, Daniel with Low Lifes, me with my stuff, and you with yours, that we've probably directed things that we've also written. So what did that look like for you, Johnny, in terms of getting them to where you want them to be?
Really be honest with you, I tend to just let the actors just go natural first, always just, like take your interpretation of what you see, that whether I've written it or whether, someone else has written it, and just kind of let them go with it. And I'm super easy to please. I mean, generally I get natural performances that way where, and if I'm looking at the monitor and I'm seeing what I like, and if it's something that I had in my head, like something like this, and it goes this way instead, then if I like it, I'll keep it and just like, okay, I think that's good enough, and try to move on. I always try to get a take in there of like just the funsies, like let's just do one more and just kind of let it go and see what happens. And then that's whenever I might say, hey, whatever you want to do with this one, try something. You want to try something different, just do whatever, and for the most part, most of my takes I've ever done, I've probably done six, might be the most I've ever, 6 takes, unless somebody's just really like not getting their lines down or something like that. But for the most part, going back to what you're saying about, what actors to use, try to get people experienced with coming to the set prepared. And everybody, I've been fortunate that everybody has come to the set prepared and just ready to, so, but as far as like kind of getting things moving and preparing, I've not really, I'm not saying this is a good thing, but have not really had a whole lot of, let's have a, reading, might do 1 or 2 readings, and then maybe just a talk, quick talk back, but try not to, push anything. I might say some things about like like a character or whatever, but I really want it to be as natural as possible for the actor to kind of bring their interpretation of what it is. Because I'm a very collaborative type of a filmmaker. I'm not a like this is it can't go, you can't go this direction, and I don't want it to go that direction. I'm really open-minded because anytime I have, the thought of the film in my head, it always changes, and I think for any of us, if we make a movie, what we have in mind of a location or people, anything like that, it always changes. So I think that's what I like, is just the natural, the fluidness of it and the organic growth of once we get on set, then that's where we start to, see where this is going to go. So yeah, that's
2 things real quick, and then I want to kind of swing that same question to Daniel, but a couple things. One, Johnny, I saw this interview the other day with Steven Spielberg, and he was talking about, he said, surprisingly, he said, I think people will think this, but I do not rehearse. He said, I do not rehearse with my actors before they get on set. And one thing that I'd always kind of built up in my head was like, man, I will feel like I have used all my preparation time wisely if I can rehearse with my actors beforehand. And that way, when we're on the day, we're rocking and rolling, and everyone knows exactly what they want. And I was really surprised to hear that Spielberg doesn't do that. So just that nugget there. But also, I've always kind of maintained, and part of this is resource management of time and just everything else, of like, I don't want to go past 3 or 4 takes on a scene, right, or a shot. And you hear people like David Fincher, even Spielberg, they're like Fincher particularly, going to 30 or 40 takes per setup. And I'm like, I don't know how these people are accomplishing this and making their days. Like, I don't know, like do you feel like you said you've hit 6 takes? Do you always feel like, you're going to call it and be like, we didn't get it, but we got 6 takes in and like, we gotta go. Or do you like, no, we're going to get it? Like, what's your methodology on that?
And it's funny because you've been my AD on my movies, and I know that you've came up to me and you're like, okay, do you feel good about that? Is there anything you want to change or anything like
Sure.
that? Because and I've and of course, I know you as an AD, you're like, well, times are running, so we got to either, if you feel good with what you got, let's move on, which I totally understand. But also, there's that like, let's just try one more, for like let's just do whatever, just try something totally different. As an actor, I love rehearsals, and I've always felt more prepared if I did come to set, because that way I kind of got a better understanding of the character and stuff like that. There's only been a couple of films that I've actually had rehearsed on, like, my second film, Sacred Ground, UCA film. Ben Aaron, who directed it, and Jason Willie and I, we rehearsed that for 3 weeks. Like, they come over to the house, and Jason and I would try different things. We kind of blocked it off, and given we're out in the woods, later, but it gave us an idea of who our characters were. I got more, So as a director, I'm more of a, let's read it a couple of times. We won't bog ourselves down into it. We'll figure it all out on set. But as an actor, I kind of like the rehearsal, which is kind of weird. You know what I mean? It doesn't really. So,
Daniel, what about you though? Like, what's your approach to getting what you've written on the page from your actors?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for one, it's a little difficult because you're right. At this age, I feel like every time I've been a director, I've also been a producer. And so kind of like half of my brain power is also just making sure we have the props and the costumes and, we're on, all these kinds of things or trying to get actors to set on time or whatever it is. And so I feel like in my experience, really the main, like, especially with Low Lives, I feel like, I feel like I did a lot of the directing in the prep of working with the actors, because we did several table reads and we did several rehearsals. And a lot of that time was less spent on blocking and was more spent on like really trying to get my actors to understand kind of psychologically their characters. Right. Because I think that to me is how I write. I have to get inside a character's head before I can write for them. And so to me, it makes most sense to try to make sure they are in the mindset that I was when I wrote it, because I feel like that's how they're going to be able to get the right performance out of it, is if they're kind of coming emotionally and maybe mentally from a similar place. And two, with Low Lives, I was really lucky, especially with Keon, that, I was asking him to play a character that he has essentially been in his past, right? So he's drawing on a lot of just personal experience and just his life, that with him it was more like you point a direction and he goes, you know what I mean? And he would just kind of take off and do his thing, and you just kind of stand back and watch the magic a little bit. With the other characters, it was a bit more, just working on delivery, whether that's tone or volume or like just little actions. I feel like almost every shot I'll do a thing where I may even just cue them while we're rolling. Like, okay, look slightly to your left, now back, now say the line. You know what I mean? Just like sometimes I think for me, maybe that's too controlling, but I have such a specific idea maybe of what that delivery is like when I'm writing it or all that. I at least want to have one take where I get that exactly. You know what I mean? I don't like to do that on every take. I like to do like what you, Johnny, said, is just kind of let them do it, especially because we've worked on it, significantly beforehand. They know kind of in the ballpark of what I'm looking for. So let's run a couple of things. I might give a couple notes. And then the last one, I would usually be like, okay, I'm just going to cue you the whole time on this one, just because I want it in my back pocket. You know what I mean? And so, I think, I don't know, like it's hard to it's hard for me to necessarily make generalizations about future directing from Low Life because I think there's a lot of that is unique to that experience. You know what I'm saying? But I think, you know, at the end of the day, I think like what I was talking about earlier with like just trying to get my actors to emotionally and mentally understand where their characters are coming from and what they're feeling when they're saying these lines. I think to me, at least that makes the most sense to me. If I'm an actor, like that's what I would want to know before I play a character is like, what are you feeling right now? What has happened in the past that has influenced where you are today? And, you know, where's their kind of mental or emotional headspace? So.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You know, another thing I kind of want to talk about here is let's say you want, you know, there's a line in the script and your actor has to be angry or to kind of be aggressive or something like that. One thing we learned, and I feel like, and again, I feel like we're babies. We're baby directors still. You know, I don't know if I would classify any of us as someone that I'd be like, oh, they're amazing director or something like that. I consider us all babies still. Just we're still learning, and I feel like probably none of us have done it enough yet to give great answers like we're trying to do at the moment, right? To give concrete answers at like our master class or something. But I have a few questions and maybe we can kind of explore it together. And one of those is, you know, this kind of feels like the idea of like, you know, don't do in parallel to screenwriting. It's like, okay, you have to do certain things when you write a script because if you don't, then they won't accept it. And it's kind of like, well, the truth is you need to kind of learn the craft and then you can kind of break the craft, right? You can kind of go outside the rules and if you can understand it. And I think the reason why teachers do that is so that you can kind of understand the general concept of the script and then kind of take it from there and do your own thing. So with directing, I think that one of the things that I've heard a lot from our level is basically using like action verbs, right? Like if you're trying to tell your actor that you want them to yell or something or to have a different type of tone, you say, okay, I want you to attack them. I want you to please them. I want you to, you know, massage them verbally. You know, it's like, and that was like a poor one, but I'm saying like you're doing verbs that kind of can kind of maybe get them to the place you're going. And I guess the idea behind that is you don't want to say you need to be mad right now. Like you need to be blah, blah, blah. Because then it's like, well, it's not as specific. And also it's like telling the actor what to do. And I just have this suspicion that it kind of can be the other way too, though. I bet if you're with Tom Cruise on set and he's doing something and you're trying to use action verbs and trying to get him somewhere, I bet you could be like, he'd probably be like, dude, I've been acting for fucking ever. What do you want? And you're like, I need you to do this here, this here, this here. Right. And like just be more transparent. I wonder if it's more of that than the other where we're trying to baby, you know, where we're trying to like, I don't know. I can't explain it how I feel about like, this.
I feel like that you're right, the action verb stuff. I think that is helpful, but I almost feel like that's more helpful for like amateur actors, honestly, right? Which is the majority of what we have in Arkansas and in films, or just, you know, people that have acted and theatrically acted, but they aren't paid actors. This isn't their career. They haven't, you know, made money off this. And this is like who they are necessarily. It's usually a hobby or something that they are pursuing, but it's like secondary to their career or something like that. And so I think you know, going back to that Steven Spielberg quote, yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you're working with like A-list top of the line actors, I might not need to rehearse either. You know what I mean? You know, if you're working with people that you trust and you know that they're going to hit their mark and they're going to know their lines and they're going to do their research, they're going to come in prepared and give a great performance. Yeah, I'm sure rehearsals are much less necessary. You know what I mean? So I mean, I do feel like I'm sure that does exist, but I'm also just assuming, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And another thing too is there's the idea, the notion that I really love is that when an actor, like, I think this was Ben Affleck or someone said this, but when they got on set and they were, you know, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. Now we're going to figure this out. And it's like one of the better experiences he had was like, oh no, I'm not here to necessarily collaborate. Like that is part of the job. I'm here to execute the vision of all these other creatives. I've been working on this for 6 to 9 months prior to day of shooting. And so it's like, they've already made the movie. the last 6-9 months, and now I'm here to just kind of fulfill that important role of being on front of the camera, because they know where the camera is going to be. They know the visual effects and how that's going to play and what they need to get those visual effects, etc. And so I love that idea of filmmaking where I show up on the day and the actor's a tool to get us to where we need to go efficiently. And obviously, I'm not saying there shouldn't be collaboration, but I don't know. I think that's a side note there of like a kind of a romantic idea of how I view it. But I don't know, Johnny, what do you think in terms of using? I think also it's probably a good thing in theater, right? Using action verbs for actors in theater. I think I've heard that before. What are you thinking on this?
Being in theater, I've never had a director do that, towards me. It's just mostly just kind of talking about this, breaking the scene down for the most part. Like, this right here, this is what's going on, the whole mood or the aura or, of that scene. And, and I've also had a director say, well, you specifically, you're not really cool with all this, or, something like that, like, this is not your thing. So, this is something that you don't want to be a part of. And so in my mind as an actor, I'm like, okay, so I'm the one who's like the outside guy and whatever. I've seen directors direct actors, been on set, watched, as a background actor in a movie called Straight A's. I was sitting right there behind Luke Wilson, and this actress who was there for, she's a producer now, quite a few films, but so her character, they're playing craps. And this is what's so weird about big films is that the guy who directed that film directed Wonderland, with Val Kilmer. And I watched him come around. And the movie, you would think that, especially if you're on set hearing him direct, Luke Wilson and his lady, especially the lady, that these two characters, it's something about them. But what's wild is that he came around and he was talking to her and he said, look, you as a young girl once, you were poor, right here, every time you throw that dice, you're going to see that old little house, the little house you grew up in. And so every time you hit that dice in, you're thinking that something bigger that's going to make you more money. You're going to have a bigger house. And he just kind of went that direction with it. And I was listening because I was right there behind him. I mean, I was touching him. That's how close we were. But I was listening to him direct her. And I was like, this is really fascinating because I hadn't read the script or nothing. And then he went behind Luke Wilson and pepped him up, took both of his hands and put them on his elbows and kind of jarred him. He goes, pep up, pep up. And he walks off. And Luke Wilson just kind of looked at him like, what? And so, and then if you watch the film when they're playing craps, nothing to do with what he told her. It's just them meeting at this casino. They have this moment and then they go to a party immediately after they play craps. So,
that's my question. I think from that right there, I mean, I got from him telling Luke Wilson, okay, you need to be more energetic. You need to be like more in the moment and excited. But for her, does that mean she's like determined to win? Is she happy to win? Is she excited to win? Is she like, well, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what that 100% means. I can kind of extrapolate. Okay, they're at a craps table. She's rolling dice. She's probably nervous and excited and wanting to win. And I can just based on my knowledge of other movies, but I don't know just from that information right there exactly what he's looking for.
And I think, looking back on it, and of course, the camera is on the craps table and they're dollying in, so it's down, then it goes up. And then you see them roll the dice. So their face is right there. And I've, as of, lately I've been watching or listening to stories on filmmakers talk about working with actors who, once that camera's there, especially when you get in for a close up, it's a much different performance when you're up front than you are from doing a wide shot or doing like something else. Because that's because they know that you're right here, so I'm gonna have to give that performance. And I'm thinking that's probably what he was doing, is like, this camera's coming right up, so once it hits you, you got to be on it. You got to make sure that you guys are trying to win $1 million here or whatever. And of course, the AD would come up to all the background actors and be like, "Energy, guys, energy. This is what we need. We need to see like you guys are having fun." And that was our direction. But even like watching, Hellfire, watching Dolph Lundgren come in and deliver his lines in front of these actors. It's all local. A couple of them are from out of state. But there's a performance. I can't give up too much out of it. But there's a little performance he did, and I was sitting there watching him from behind the camera, and I was like, "This is why he's a professional. His cadence, his delivery, the way he spoke these lines were incredible." And the director, barely gave me any directions at all. He just let him come in. And he cut. Let's do it again. Great job. Just keep it up. Keep up the energy. All right, let's go. He's all waving his hands around, stuff like that. More so for everybody around. But when Dolph walked in, Dolph was like super laid back, quiet, and very, I want to say, more menacing. But that's not the direction he gave him or anything, or even talked to him about. So it's just fascinating to see, from a working on bigger sets, of how, the two different styles of directing I've seen up front. And there's been a few others I've seen too that, right offhand, I can't, nothing stuck out.
Well, I have a question, Johnny, about Hellfire. Did the director, if he wasn't giving Lundgren any direction per se, like not any strong direction, was Lundgren keeping it pretty consistent between takes? And if so, did he ever get annoyed that he was on take 3 or take 4 and like he's just doing the same thing over again? You're like, you're wasting my fucking time kind of thing?
I only saw a couple of takes, and then I ran off to go do something else, but they're very consistent. I mean, as soon as he walked back in there, and I didn't see him, walk up to him. And if he did give him directions, it was pretty close up. It wasn't for everybody to hear. So he would walk over to him and just kind of talk to him. But the times that I did see the director directing, he was very, very animated, very loud. So he's done a lot of action films, so he's very passionate, and he's out I won't say anything about his nationality that had anything to do with it, but he's a very passionate filmmaker. He's from Greece, he's a Greek filmmaker, and so he's very, very animated, very, very loud, and very like, let's go, shoot. And he's like that with everybody. But when I saw him work with Stephen Lang, it was very, very quiet, and so different, interesting dynamics overall, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
Well, I mean, I think the problem too is, not even a problem, but we're getting a count from you, and you in terms of these filmmakers that I'm not very familiar with, and every filmmaker and director is probably similar in some ways and different in a lot of other ways. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm not even quite sure there's an end goal to this conversation or anything. I think I'm just trying to get a feed on, just everyone here at the table is like, what are we looking for? Then, what's our expectations and how are we going about, I'm just kind of getting a feel for it. Just thought we could, explore that a little bit together. I think that's kind of my main goal. Dan, you got any thoughts on any of this?
No, not really. I mean, honestly, like y'all have directed a lot more than me. And so I feel like I'm even a little bit more like, I feel like I still need to just work on my craft so much of directing to even feel like really comfortable to step on set again. Like I feel like I would need a lot of just to prepare myself for that. And so, yeah, I feel a little bit green, in this area, but I think it's a fascinating stuff to talk about, and I think it is helpful to talk about for sure.
Well, I kind of feel like, let's use Kronos as an example. I can feel the writing. I feel it more on the day, like cracking, than I did when I wrote it. Because when you have someone, you're watching the actor say your lines, and they're not 100% doing maybe the thing that you want. I'm like, and just hearing them, their cadence and just the verbiage and how the flow of the dialogue. And most of the time I'm like, it's not so much them, I think it's the writing. And I think like sometimes, on the moment I'll change a word or dialogue, and then, or I'll just shoot it the way it is because of whatever, like we've kind of almost like you're you've made your decision beforehand. You can't change too much because you got to rock and roll kind of thing. And we got to get 6 pages today or 4 pages. And like, everyone's wanting lunch in 30 minutes. And like, we can't do too much, innovation, creativity, especially when everyone's looking to you. Sometimes you don't have, a team of people to bounce ideas off that you trust. I'm not saying you don't, but I'm saying, I'd feel more comfortable if you were on set, Daniel, where I'm like, hey, we can hash this out really quick versus
right.
me talking to my gaffer or something who I don't know the writing style or something. That's my example. Right. They may be a great writer, but I'm not comfortable with them yet, So, but I think I felt like that more than anything, like the writing would be cracking during the moments. And like, okay, it was a reflection of like what I was crafting months in advance beforehand. But there was always nice to get someone like Clayton and really particularly Tom Kagi on there because I felt like no matter what I wrote, Tom was going to deliver it. I could have said, rubber duckies are, something crazy about rubber duckies or forever. And he would have done it in a way that I'm like, oh, it's amazing. Like he did it in a way that it felt good. And like he made that work some reason, so I do think as the old adage is like directing is, 80% casting your actors. I do believe that. But I would just I know there's behind the scenes stuff. It's one thing I've been meaning to do in a big, bad way lately. But I just want to know how Spielberg and all these other directors talk to their actors in the moment. Because, like, another thing is, too, is, there's the old adage of, like, actors or actresses are insecure, right? And I'm not saying they all are, but there's the idea that, they're worried about what they're going to look like on camera and those kind of things. And most of that stems from people who are newer or people who are breaking into the industry and those kind of things. I'm sure Robert Downey Jr. doesn't care as much. But like the idea, like you don't show them your monitor, right? They're always like some people get an actress. It's like, let me see it on my take. As soon as they're done with it, you're like, no, we gotta go for another take. And B, you're going to get inside your head and you're going to like, I don't know, see your performance and be like, oh, that's weird to critique it. And then I want to sit there and I want to like, not baby you, but like reassure you and be like, oh, you're doing fine. You're doing great. And like, let's go for another one and don't have a mental breakdown and those kind of things. So there's just like so many different avenues here, depending on also the level that you're shooting at. So, I don't know. That's the thing. I brought this question up because I wanted to talk about something in the filmmaking related, but also B, I don't think I have a strong grasp on any of this stuff yet or what the best way to do it. And the dangerous thing is the dangerous side of this is going on a set or directing and it's more like actors. I have a pretty strong feeling about camera positions and blocking, and I it's really just about the acting part that concerns me. It's getting an actor to the emotional place that you want them to go. I remember hearing Werner Herzog. He made like the couple actors run around the building a couple times where they're like exasperated and they start the scene then, and it's like, well, can you do that nowadays? I mean, like, is that abusive? Like what's the line? What is the line? What's going on now? And I think unless you're there on the set, I almost feel like it's impossible to kind of learn. There's no strong. You can go to classes, but who are you learning from then? Teachers who never directed before, so nothing that's important or serious or that's taken serious in the field. So I don't know. I don't know the best way to learn this kind of stuff, and also because you're going to learn 5,000 different things from 5,000 different people. Also, anyway, it is an interesting conversation. John, any thoughts on any of that?
Well, it's interesting because I've worked with a lot of directors as an actor, and there was a film student who's a good friend, and I was in one of his films. And every time we would shoot, cut. All right, hey Johnny, come here for a second. I'm like, all right, how you feeling? How's that? How are you feeling about this? I mean, how is and he and I was like, oh, I feel good. And he goes, well, so you feel like you're, this, and this, and I'm like, okay, yeah. All right, cool. All right, let's go. All right, everybody, let's go back to one. So we do it again and cut. Hey Johnny, come here for a second. It's like, okay. And he's like, how you feeling? I'm like, no different. Like literally 5 seconds ago, I just did the same thing, and it's interesting now because as I audition for films and the bigger projects that I've been auditioning for, I noticed that like I've really brought my, performances down, be more natural. So, I mean, as soon as I shoot an audition, I will come in here and I'll watch it. There's sometimes I'll take out the card and come in here and watch my auditions, and I'm like, okay, I didn't like that, but I like where I'm going with this, and I'll come back in and I'll do it. That's just for my auditions. No, and then at the time, I knew that whenever he was pulling me out of this, he was pulling me out of the film. It was like, because watching the film now, and bless his heart, he was going by what he was learning at film school, and that's what he told me is this what I'm doing was suggested, to try with actors, and he really went with it. He really ran with it, but the arc of my character in this whole situation didn't. But and part of this was the writing. I didn't feel like my character would be treating this girl or this person the way she was being treated, because there was no reason for it. And and whenever we were filming this, and I knew this, and I was forcing attitude, and I was forcing a feeling that shouldn't have, you know what I mean? And it just felt very unnatural. It didn't feel real. And when I watch the film now, it's really hard to watch, because it's like, that doesn't make sense. And I don't see how an audience would, would understand that. It's kind of like, let me just use Ted Lasso for an example. And, I've watched the season, and there were some character things that made me go, what? Where did that come from? And, Carrie and I be watching it, and I'm like, I don't get why so-and-so is doing this now. All out of the 3 seasons, why is it happening now? There was no sense of things that was peppered for the first 2 seasons, and now all this, it's just weird. So, it's just, directors are going to bring their own uniqueness to a film as far as directing styles go. I know I'm jumping back and forth from directing to character. I don't know, I'm just going all over the place.
No, it's fine. There's no hard structure for this episode. Again, it may be a bad episode because we're telling people like how inexperienced we are, but I think it's an open conversation in terms of, I mean, in the moment, I feel very confident that we're going to get the things that we need to get that day. Yeah. But I don't know how to get better without doing it more. And also, I don't know. But even then, it's like, I guess when you screen it, you're like, oh, I should have done this differently. But I don't know. It's just it's a complicated question. I don't know exactly how to figure it out just yet.
I can say this for book club, which still working on. A lot of mistakes I realized I made along the way, and part of that was talking with the actors. And for one, I was at most of the time I was working with more than 5 actors at a time, and so the ladies at the beginning of the film, back and forth, of course I'm watching this as I'm cutting, and some of the actors was like, Johnnie didn't really tell me where I needed to go. Where should I go? And this is in a take. And I'm like, oh my God. So, things like that. Like I should have drew out a better game plan with the movement and with the dialogue and the back and forth, which like I said before, I let everybody just do their thing and then we'll figure it out. But everybody did fine. I didn't have any notes, during that the performances. But looking back as an editor, editing my film, I was like, I should have made it a little bit more of a dance.
That one would have benefited, and we all felt this while we were shooting. This, we've talked about this. That one particularly would have benefited from planning in terms of shots, execution, and block. That was more of a blocking issue because you have 6 actors, 6 actresses, and they all have a moment in the dialogue, and it's kind of like we also did some things that was in retrospect not the smartest in terms of camera placement for like OTSs and stuff like that. So I think that kind of bit you in the ass a little bit, and that was a decision that there's an idea that me and Jared had, and I don't think it worked very well. So that's what you get for trusting us, Johnny.
No, but it flows good though. That's the thing about it, is that all that, it's editable.
Yeah, I've seen it. It still works. I'm just, there's one of those things. So you're part of directing and writing those things is also like trying to save future Johnny, future Daniel, future Donovan from a lot of headache. It's like you can still squeeze some, juice out of that lemon, but it's just a lot harder to squeeze sometimes when it could have just been like, oh, it could have been easy because you really thought about it and kind of went down that rabbit hole of creativity versus, okay, now I have all this stuff and like, how do I get what I needed to get to, and also is it interesting and all these other things. We could probably sit here and nonchalantly talk about filmmaking decisions all day long and everything else, but I just kind of wanted to just pick your guys' brain, just kind of see where you guys were at emotionally with it, and just also if you had anything I hadn't thought of yet. So Daniel, how can listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/241mail. Let us know how you direct actors. This is only for directors. No one else can write in. I guess if you're an actor, you can talk about how you were directed and it was good or bad. Anyway, directors and actors are the only people that can write into bit.ly/241mail. And so everyone else that always writes in every week, I'm sorry, we're just going to ignore your messages.
Yeah. And I would love to learn what you prefer, and like also what's the thing that got you to the place that you didn't know you needed to go to. I think that's interesting. But yeah, no, Daniel or Johnny, how can our listeners find the cool things that you do?
You can find me on right now my website I'm working on it because reworking it, but find me on Facebook, JB Film Work or Made in Arkansas. We will be having our festival again next year, and so we got some changes that we're working out right now with bringing people in and old faces. Tony Taylor, he was with us whenever we first, or actually he started Made in Arkansas 10 years ago. And, he had a stroke right before our first festival. And so really since day one, it's been me and Carrie. So, Tony's feeling like, he wants to get back into it, and we're trying to figure out ways to make it all work, because a lot's happened, a lot's changed. And, we got some ideas on some things we'd like to try, but we just want to make sure it fits our mission, basically. So just want to make sure that we're still supporting the filmmakers and the actors of our state, and made anything that's made in Arkansas that we've done, just we don't want to make any sudden changes or crazy changes. So we're doing some growing, and we got some ideas that we think that will be a lot of fun with more screenings of Arkansas films and stuff like that. So we're working on some things on the side. So yeah.
That's awesome. We'll make sure we drop some of these links in the comment section below. Again, guys, if you can't write into our Bitly, you can always write in those comment section below. YouTube.com/2for1studios, the best place to listen to the content. Johnny, Daniel, it was a pleasure having you both go down this the mysteries of directing. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, or don't know. I don't have my finger on it still even now, but it's always a pleasure talking to you, Johnny. And I hope you can come back on an episode where we break something down or review something, or maybe we can find another topic in the filmmaking realm. So as we sign off, Johnny, of course, my name is Donovan Thompson.
I am Daniel Wingfield.
And I'm Johnny Brannon.
Johnny fucking Brannon. And we have spoken.